Howdy hi. It took a moment to figure out everything. Gracious. So, as it does, for whatever reason, I always have these how to put it, trepidatious feelings, hesitancy in doing these. I don't know why. For whatever reason, I get a little apprehensive about them. I was like, I don't know if I should really do this or if I should just not and just hold off. It is what it is. Part of it's also just because I'm lazy. I'd be like, how do I want to do this? I don't know. I just want to be lazy. But that day is not here. Other days, maybe, but not today. So I hope people are doing well. I hope you have procured and grabbed your biscottis. I've got my two here, the same as last week's, the gingerbread and the turtle pecan. Yeah, that's what we got going on here for that. So you see, I've lost some of the face fur, but it grows back quickly. So that's, I don't know. I probably should keep on it a little bit better moving forward, but it is what it is. The tune playing there was the good old intro. The intro tune that I had going there was the one of my own. It's called a Broken Chord. So if you like that, it's on here on the channel. I have a few different tunes and stuff. It's one of those things that's very boom or bust. And I feel like if I don't do it then and there, I might not get done because it's really hard for me to get into to flip to it for some reason. There's a few of them that I have that I'm like, oh, I need to piece it together, but my dumb butt's like, I don't know what I'm doing. But that's I think part of the fun in it. It's not knowing what you're doing. Sometimes it's incredibly frustrating. So yeah. But anyways, hope everybody is doing well. Enjoy the comfy, cozy Saturday. It is a week of bitter chill that really can go about its way, but it is towards the end of February, so it'll probably be done here before too long. So that's kind of what we got going here. I'm gonna close out that. There we go. All right. So yeah, brief recap, I guess. Sort of just last week did an intro, just talking about stuff. Read 2 chapters and then go through. So there's what I'll do is I'll read a chapter and explain thought process behind it. Whether that's to justify how it's written or to just be like, this is what I came up with for it. Less justification and more of just explanation for why my brain put it out there the way it did. But so read chapter, explain it, and then also go over after the chapter, go through the index. Like I said last week on it, the index is on the front so that you can kind of avoid too much in the way of spoilers. And sometimes there's some little tasty bits of information in the index that isn't provided in the book itself, that isn't world shattering by any stretch of the imagination, but it's like, oh, interesting. So sometimes, not always, but yeah, so that is what we got going here. So the aim for today, and like I'd like to do for all these sorts of streams, is to about an hour and a half or so do that kind of reading. Am I a professional reader by any stretch? No. So I will goof up things. I will mistake things partially because that is who I am. Other partially, it maybe I probably could have edited something a little bit better. So I might at times make a little note to go through because it's a self-published book. It is just done by myself, outside of the artwork and everything. So, yeah, it's a little bit of effort. So you do what you can, and you have fun doing it, or maybe not have fun doing it, but you grit your teeth and get through it. So for today, I'd like to try to get through at least chapters 3, 4, and 5. That's about a few pages more than what we'd gotten through, which was only about 15 last week. And then I think those 3 chapters is about, it's a little bit more, but not terribly much more. So at least get through those, perhaps even chapter 6, depending on time and whatnot. So, yeah. So, let us... Actually, no, let me give a quick recap. So what happened in those first 2 chapters? First 2 chapters, you are introduced to 2 characters, friends. They are on the younger side of things. It kind of put you around like anywhere from 15, 17 or so at the latest. And they are the 2 main characters of this book. That is Jaharl and Tamilia, and Jaharl's a bit more of an introspective, not necessarily a shy boy, but a little bit more introspective, contemplative, get lost in the head a bit too much, and Tamilia is a bit tomboyish, but not like she doesn't have any sense. It's not like a himbo adjacent sort of thing. I don't know how to put it, but she's a bit more outgoing, a bit more just, I wouldn't necessarily say pleasant, because sometimes some people can be annoying even if they do come across as pleasant, but they have a good relationship with each other, and a little bit of introduction with that, and then as Charles trying to figure out a musical tune, Tamilia. So this being a story that was initially based on a game idea, Jaharl uses he likes to use a spear. He likes to keep people away, poke at them from a distance, and Tamilia likes to get up close and personal with the board. What's the sort of slashing board with a cutting board with and she's got a little sword and a buckler shield kind of thing that she likes to use. So those are their weapons of choice. No idea why I said it that way, but I did. So they have a brief little interaction with each other on that. Tamilia wins, and then they dart back to the village because there's going to be a communal dinner plus a supper, as it were, and there's a meeting afterwards, and that has not been revealed yet in the story exactly what it's about. It's been some slight hints to it don't matter what the results are going to be, we're doing it anyways. And then they had their meal, and then there was a little bit of a story of like what was creation period and stuff, and that's what is going on. So now we are in chapter 3, and I'm going to get rid of this for now. Get rid of the clip. Boom. All right. So chapter 3, The Gathering. As the excited buzz of supper and tales of creation slipped away like smoke into the cool night, spirited shadows rippled across the villagers' faces. The villagers' faces, and anxiousness crept about Mahri, shining in someone's eyes, leaping from the stern look of another. Hesitantly, they proceeded with the matter, which only grew more concerning with winter's nearing. Hello. Jaharl examined those present. For all his years as a child, he had wanted to be a part of these gatherings, to be more responsible in the eyes of his family and the elders. Yet, he had always imagined he would be accompanied by 3 friends at his side, not one. Though that dream had long since given way to a newer, more adventurous dream, a somber feeling welled up in his chest, like a great stone tied to his heart. The best way I can do it for like inner thoughts is I want to point to my noggin. But yeah, hi Slade, how's it going? Hope all's well. Inner thought. Where are those two idiots? We all know why we're here. Elder Gerald's gravel voice broke the silence, jolting the young man from his thoughts. The elderly speaker glanced toward the two young friends, allowing a faint smile to briefly crack his face before he continued to address the congregation. But first, I'd like to know, has there been any word from Calendar or River Split? Classo, were you the one who went to Calendar today? I was. I waited as long as I could before needing to trek back up that trail. It's not rough, but feels that way the older I get. No wonder why you choose to stay here in Machri, Gerald. We'd have to carry you back if you went down to Calendar. A few chuckles loosened the atmosphere as a grin found itself upon Jaharl's father's face. But I'm guessing you're not one to hear my joking, eh, Gerald? I am an old man, Classo. I'll be nothing but dust and bones by the time you stumble into being funny. A roar of laughter filled the village as he waited for an opportunity to respond. Got it, sheath the daggered words, old man. But to add what I was saying, no one had heard anything, and that's for Calendar and River Split. Made sure to get to Calendar by dawn to send out another runner. They got to River Split, and another came back before heading home for supper. Still no sightings of the two. The elder shook his head, hoping he had heard incorrectly. None? Aye, you heard me, Gerald. Classo stared at the old man. No sightings. About 20 different, smaller conversations broke out amongst the adults. Many had hoped against reason that somehow, some way, today's report would be for the better, that the two would be returning with Saedra's blessing. As the chatting dragged on, the tension in their voices, their words gradually increased into a cascade of sound. Stifle! Classo attempted to quiet the crowd by also waving his hands, so Elder Gerald could speak again. All right. Okay. You lot are loud enough to stir the dead from their graves. All is not lost simply because my grandson and Vendine have yet to return. But it's nearly winter. It doesn't take 2 seasons to trek to Sameen and back. Oh, gods forgive us. At least spare our children. They don't deserve the punishment of their parents' failures. Like a rocky cliffside facing the sea, Elder Gerald weathered the waves of concern voiced by the villagers. He listened and mentally noted how many were airing their grievances. He began to notice the same 5 people chiming in, not allowing others to speak their own opinions on the matter. If anyone had paid particular attention, they would have spotted more than a tinge of contempt edged into his features. Enough! He bellowed. Are you all mad? Should I bring the children out here and send you lot to bed? Did you forget, with your mead-filled bellies and your drunken noggins, that we pray to Myron, the first son of Halmdro and Saedra? The elder's gaze softened slightly as the other villagers shifted in their seats uncomfortably. The cackling of the torches filled the void left by the departure of the outcries. Moments later, a far-off howl of a wolf, followed closely by the hooting of an owl, added their calls for silence. The old man looked upward at the sky as he mindlessly counted the stars. Sounds like the wild ones are in agreement with you, Gerald. Classo winked at Tamilia and Jaharl. I imagine the 2 young ones have something to add to this gathering. We do, they both said, standing up. Tamilia spoke first. Now, I'm not going to get angry like the elder, and neither is Jaharl. At least I don't think he will. It isn't our place. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I was disappointed. I understand being scared, but that won't help bring Hardwin and Vanine back. Do you want us all to simply wait here and make no effort to bring them back? That's right, Jaharl chimed in and moved closer to Elder Gerald. I understand that winter nears. We need to have our cellars filled for the bitter cold months ahead. But tell me, who here wouldn't do more if one of us was in need of help? Big difference between needing help and doing what you're suggesting, one of the elders retorted. Aye, mocking the gods is a quick way to a damning judgment, Gerald's wife, Elder Lapamu, added. Her words in particular stung the duo, as many murmured in agreement. I would not agree to sending you two in their place. If my grandson and Vanine are off being fools elsewhere, we must suffer for their failures. We must not have raised them to do better. No need to invite a greater wrath. Aye, Jahar and Tamila, you're not even a couple. You think Myron or Halmdril would be kind and forgiving with a bit of lying you two are wanting to do? How about Saedra? It's her blessing we'd be tainting. I bet speaking this way right now is probably enough to damn our souls. Or how about those fools living in Samine, or elsewhere in Pirail would feel, trying to trick the people and tarnish Saedra's calling as a death sentence, and not a swift one at that. As the retorts in Lapamu's favor gained more traction, the anger inside Jaharl burned hot. With a clenched fist, he studied their expressions and felt every pointed word that stabbed forth. Like being pricked by a dagger at each utterance, his jaw tightened. Are you all truly so timid at heart? What do you have to fear from gods who never show? We have a chance. Fate is providing me and Tamilia a chance to go beyond the mountainside. Why not allow it to guide us? Steeling his heart, he shouted above the noisy opposition, Are all you? Tamilia grabbed his elbow and gestured toward her grandmother. He answered with a confused look as the noise of the adults began to increase in fervor once more. She repeated her gesture, coupled with mouthing to him to allow Aaliyah to speak. He nodded in acknowledgement. Quiet, quiet. Elder Aaliyah wishes to speak. Quiet! Thank you, Jahar. I can't quite shout like I used to. The elderly woman let out a raspy chuckle. I understand your worries. I have my own about this whole ordeal. However, don't sit there and act like you speak for the gods. I could easily say Saedra would be greatly pleased we're making such an effort to receive her blessing. And if she is as kind as those who pray to her believe, why wouldn't that be true? Another period of silence draped over the village of Mahri, as the people realized neither side was going to convince the other. As the villagers exchanged muted gestures, questioning what to do, Elder Gerald seized their attention and moved to start what the whole purpose of this gathering was. This has taken long enough. It is time we put this decision to a vote. The other villagers echoed their approval and formed a line. As they did so, the old man procured 2 small cloth sacks, which he had been sitting on to slightly cushion his seat. He placed them on the ground, with space enough between them for the line to pass through with ease. Stepping back, he rubbed the sleep from his eyes. All right, you know what to do. Place your birthstone in the blue one, if you agree, and the brown one if you don't. And so we're as clear as the waters of the Husren. The vote is to send Jahar and Tamilia to find Hardwin and Vanine. If they do run into those two, they are to bring them back home to receive a mountain's worth of words from all of us. If they cannot find them, they will go to Samine and receive Saedra's blessing. Begin. The elder made his way to the end of the line as it marched between the 2 bags. He whispered a prayer under his breath. Myron, master of our mountain home, please, let them see it in their hearts to let those 2 go. To find my silly love-struck grandson and his wife, and to bring them home. I beg you with what little life still courses through this aged body of mine. By the time he finished his prayer, it was his turn to vote. Gently tossing his birthstone into the blue sack, he collected them and gave a mental measurement of the 2 as he drifted back to his seat. Once everyone was ready, He pulled the stones from the blue bag and counted them loudly. His hand trembled as he did so. Get to 23. All we need is 13, no, 12 more, 10 more, 9, 8, 7. There are plenty more. There are more than 23 here. With reserved enthusiasm, the old man grabbed another stone and remained steady in his counting, trying not to reveal the result prematurely. Before long, the answer became clear to the others witnessing the count. From the voting, we have 28 in favor of sending them. 17 were against it. This is ridiculous. I want no part of this. May the gods forgive us. Now, in an effort to cut down on the vocal disagreements, Gerald waved his hand as sharply as his aged body would allow. The vote has been cast. The decision has been made. Jaharl and Tamilia, pack well and be ready to leave no later than 5 days from tonight. That will be enough time to prepare and see everyone before leaving. Also, it will give my grandson and Vanine a little more time to return. The two clapped enthusiastically, as a weight had been lifted from their shoulders. Their excitement faded when they caught sight of Hardwin's and Vanine's parents huddled together. Trepidatious on how they should approach them, the two stood some distance back and waited. As though their hesitancy could be sensed, Vanine's mother, Celine, raised her head and looked in their direction. Tears streamed down her reddening face as she mouthed her appreciation for what they were willing to do. Dun, 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 dun. All right, that is the end of Chapter 3. Before talking about it a little bit, we'll do a little bit of the good old index. All right, so well, a lot more towns and stuff have been talked about here, so we'll get into those. So I think actually, yeah. Most of these are. So Calendar is a village in Perail between River Split and Mahri. It's actually very close nearby. My dumb self, legit, when I came up with the name, was I had forgotten the word colander. And so and I wasn't thinking of like a calendar, but it's like colander. It just, I think I initially had called it colander, not knowing that that was a word. Or knowing it's a word and not realizing that what it was. So I was like, shoot, I kind of like the sound of it, so I kind of twisted it a little bit, so it was colander. Yeah, it happens sometimes. Sometimes you're just a little simple, and sometimes you're a whole lot simple. That one was a whole lot simple. Okay, next up is River Split, which once again, I really like the name of that. That's such a oh no. yeah, pretty much oh no. I like the name River Split. That I feel like that's like, yeah, that was a very great name. But it's a trading town slowly growing in size. Its name stems from the Granell River cutting the town into two sides. So there's you get a lot of that. Like there's even there's a place not terribly far from where I live. It's a town that's gotten slowly bigger. It was bigger on one side than the other, like a generation or two, or maybe even a little bit more before me. And then the interstate went through on the other side, and it's of the river. And so that other side has gotten bigger. And this is McConnellsville and Malta. So you have two different towns on the Muskingum River, and it's very interesting to kind of see it. Like McConnellsville has gotten a lot bigger, and it's a thriving town. And then right across the rivers, it's gotten a little puny. I think they're trying to do a good job of it, but it's kind of interesting. It hasn't conglomerated into just being called one town or the other. But River Split is the name of it. You just have the west end and west end and the east end of it. But big old river cuts through River Split. Hence the name. Amazing how that one works out. That one was not me being stupid. So, oh gracious. All right. Sage's blessing is it is said to bring prosperity to those who receive it and deliver it back to their hometowns. Saedra's calling is the pilgrimage to Saedra's shrine and back. It is also the name of the yellow comet, which signifies the start of the holy event. And I'll touch base. Actually, no, we'll just do it now. Why? But that is what is going on in the image there. So there we go. That is Saedra's calling. So that's kind of the other thing with the image in the lettering is kind of prequel-ish, or shortly before the story. Here's an event that has gone on, and it has triggered something, and we'll kind of touch base on that here, and after I finish up the last couple of the index. But so that's Saedra's calling, is the comet. Saedra's the goddess. Goddess saved people. That's how that goes. So the idea is this comet comes around every couple generations, and so the people in the region see the comet, and they see it as a sign to do this. It's not an adventure; it's a pilgrimage. But they do this pilgrimage, and those who are chosen to do it generally are, and it will come up later in the story, but I'll mention it now. They are a representation of Katos and Aaliyah. Is that or Talia? Oh, I forget. Oh shoot. Oh, I have it written down because my brain, for whatever reason, I always forget one of their names, and I think it's Katos is the one that I'm forgetting now. Or I remember. Oh, fiddlesticks. I have it written down. You would have figured I would have put it in here, but I didn't. Which is... Oh, no. Katos and Olia. I have it in here. It doesn't just come up until later. Katos and Olia. So they are like the first humans, and they are saved by Saedra. So the couple that goes to receive the blessing for the pilgrimage are a representation of Katos and Olia, and they go to do the blessing and receive the blessing and come back with it. And I'll touch base a little bit more after I get through the last index here. The last index is Samine, Parales, the kingdom of Parales' cultural heart. The city lies near the kingdom's western shores, very close to the western shores. It is said to be the place where Saedra came down to save the human race. Saedra's shrine is located nearby. So, so that is... so Samine is where the Saedra's shrine is. So they, have to go. Let me bring up the cover real quick and change it to the map real quick. There we go. And then readjust the map size. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. All right. Okay. Double check to make sure that's on there. Okay. Good. So, as you can see, Mahri is in this upper right quadrant in the middle of the mountains. And you have Calendar, River Split, and you have some others. If you follow the road west, eventually you reach Samine, which is close to the western shores of with the Colgan and all that sort of fun jazz. So, yeah, I'll leave this up here for a moment. No, I won't, because that's actually for the next chapter. So we'll hide this and bring this back up later. But yeah, so the blessing, that is the blessing. They go go to Saemine, go to Saedra Shrine, have the ritual and whatever that all entails, get the blessing, and come back. However, it is something that will frequently pop up in the book is that it's a little bit on the considered a blasphemous thing to be lying and just sort of not really part of it. However, a lot of people they run into are aware of it, but they don't really think of anybody being so bad about it. And some people are like, yeah, like they have some of the similar thoughts of, well, what's the big deal if we're going for the blessing? What's the problem with it? So it is a cultural problem, so to say, that they're fighting with. That these people up in the mountains, like they more so worship Myron, who is Saedra's son. So they're Saedra's and Hamjal's son. So they're kind of like it's. It's a similar thing to like that, like the old ancient ways of we've got our city gods and stuff, and those that's who we rah behind, and that's who very similar mindset. However, sometimes maybe it's not such a bad idea to ask the favor of some of the other gods about. Maybe they might toss us a little bit of a blessing every now and again. At least in Perael, they're a little bit more accepting of other religions and stuff. As there will be one that'll come up that will have a lot of we don't know about these people. We don't really like them or trust them, but we're not gonna. If they've decided to keep to themselves, that's for the better. So. So you have that. So that part of blasphemous trouble. And then the other thing is if the idea behind it is that if the ones who are sent to represent being saved by Saedra not getting there, or getting there and not coming back, they are set for trouble. That's like ill omens. Well, you didn't send people who Saedra approved, so now you will suffer ill omens and troubles and stuff. That's why they're getting into a tizzy about sending people who are not couples. They aren't who they were sending in the first place. So now it's like why are you doing this? You're just beckoning trouble. So that is what is going on. And I feel like if you try to get like more into that and try to like hammer that in, it would start to bog down, because then it's like, oh wow, so it's one of those things that has to be reinforced in a way as the story goes along. Because if you try to keep hammering that point, it just makes it more and more of a slog, I feel, at least in the sense of a story pacing and such. Delicious biscotti. Okay. So now we're going to go into chapter 4. So, chapter 4, Preparation. The following days blurred together as the villagers carefully prepared food and supplies for their young saviors. All the while, they all silently hoped each day would be the day Hardwin and Vanine returned. As day bled into night, and night was washed away by daylight, the adults did what they could to make Jaharl and Tamilia's journey an easy one. For the soon-to-be travelers, the days offered a thick stew of emotions to work through, with impatience quickly becoming a hearty portion of the concoction. On the morning of the day before they were set to leave, the two leaned against the eastern fence, watching dawn break, showering the region with blessed light. The darkened expanse of the vale below faded into the myriad of colors of fall, which continued to lose their vibrancy with each passing day. As though guided by the radiance, a chilly gust followed up the vale. The forest turned into a sea of leaves as branches, like waves, swayed from the force. "I guess winter doesn't want us to forget it's coming," Tamelia quipped as she rubbed her forearms. "You'd think the wind has a mind of its own finding any way to slip through these sleeves." "It's not so bad. Wait till the snow starts falling." A grin raced across Jarl's face as he turned in time to catch her shudder. "I don't want to think about it," she shivered again. "I wouldn't blame those two if they went south to Rowan to avoid the snow coming." He belted out a dry laugh. "Message retracted. I saw that. That is all right. I am a biscotti eater." That does not sound like something... Okay, let me start over here. "I wouldn't blame those two if they went south to Rowan to avoid the snow coming." He belted out a dry laugh. That does sound like something Vanine would suggest." "Suggest? More like kindly demand. She's more like a thorn dressed in honey than any aster." "Aye, and we both know Hardwin would jump at any chance to make her happy." They both shared a laugh as fond memories filled their hearts. However, those happy times were quickly chased away by another mighty gust. The pair froze up as they held tightly to the fence for support. A coldness slithered into their chests, writhing as they both soundlessly gazed eastward. With the pleasantry of their conversation blown away, the two stared off into the distance. Where did those two idiots go? What am I... No. Where did those two idiots go? He pounded his fist on top of one of the fence posts and immediately shook his hand, regretting the action. "I guess we'll learn soon enough. I might have been joking, but Hardwin always does what he can to make her happy." She noticed a few fallen seeds on a post near where her hand rested and began flicking them into the wild. He grunted. That's something she always liked about him, even when it's led to trouble." Aye, that she does." She softly sighed. "They'll get more than an earful when we find them. We'll be the first to knock them on their asses for making us all worry so much. And they'll have earned every bump and bruise." Tamelia nodded in agreement. As she did so, she spotted a small group of children heading their direction. Jokingly, she placed a hand on her friend's shoulder and called out loudly enough for them to hear, "Careful! A band of Saul draw near." In mock fear, Jaharl jumped behind her, shouting, "Ack! Let's run away!" Wait! The children called out as the two turned to flee. "We don't want to play that," Percy shouted, running up to the two. He was followed closely by the others in the group. "We want Jaharl to play some music for us," Clara explained. "Oh, really?" He tried his best to hide his surprise. "Thinking time. Usually you little monsters want me to play music so you can run off and get in trouble." Non-thinking time. "Aye," they answered in a somewhat disjointed chorus, jumping and clinging to Jaharl's and Tamelia's arms and legs. A chant quickly followed that grew louder and louder. Play your lute! Play your lute!" All right, he replied, acting as though he had finally relented to such an arduous demand, while prying them off of him as best he could. "But calm down a little bit. You lot are going to wake the Argia with as loud as you're all being." At the mentioning of the Argia, the children went from joyful shouting to hushed celebration. They turned to face the veil and, with fearful caution, stepped away from the protected precipice. Murmurs and gestures communicated to one another and to Jaharl and Tamelia that they would be waiting at the maple clearing. As abruptly as they had appeared, they left the two alone and raced through the village, collecting the other children as they made their way to the meeting spot. Small wonder our parents told us about the Argia when we were younger. She fixed her tunic. Right? Like putting the fear of the gods into a person. She shrugged. I guess. He frowned and he looked at her. Why do you say that? Well, the Argia aren't real, but the gods are. The words Jaharl wanted to say wavered on his tongue. During that pause, he wrestled with how best to explain himself. Ultimately, he shelved those thoughts deep within his breast for another, more appropriate moment. Everything all right? Her friend's pained demeanor did not escape her notice. Shaking his head, his answer was less than confident. It crossed my mind that I need to think of what songs I should play for them. Problem is, I haven't really practiced that much lately, so I might be a little off. Oh, I wouldn't worry too much about that. They'll be happy to hear something other than the elders yelling at them to behave. Jaharl smiled as he chuckled. Isn't that the truth? Together they collected his loot and a few odds and ends from Tamelia's house. By the time they reached the clearing, they were pleasantly surprised to see most of the village was there, waiting for Jaharl to play. As the young men prepared, Elder Gerald explained, we may not be able to treat ourselves to your thoughtful music again until after the snows have melted. Though we cannot provide a feast for your departure, and Tamelia, to wash away that sour look, I was including you as well. Anyway, we still would like to enjoy your company and merriment and mirth before you two leave tomorrow. Tamelia's frown bent into a smile. I think he's more than surprised than anything. He's been exercising his head trying to settle on what he should play for the kids. My boy uses his head a bit too much. Hopefully you and this journey will make him think a little less and do a little more, Jan quipped. I'm fine as I am, Mom. You say that. You say what you want. It's a mother's right to worry about her child. Don't worry, Jan. I'll save him from himself, Tamelia added, flexing her arm. We'll be fine, Jaharl said, pushing his friend to the side. Using the opportunity, she toppled over and rolled toward the children. When she stopped in front of them, she stretched out and struck a pose, comfortable with where she was. The children laughed and joined in the fun, some mimicking her by tumbling on the ground and into each other for that matter, while making their own more... let me start that again. The children laughed and joined in the fun. Some mimicked... Let's take a drink. Coffee, save me. Saved. Okay. Some mimicked her by tumbling on the ground, and into each other for that matter, while making their own, much more animated poses. Others piled on her and started a game of wrestling. They were nothing short of relentless in their efforts. You little monsters, what did you eat for breakfast? Stones? Playfully she pried them away, but each time she did, a different child's grip tightened. As she struggled, more children joined. She was fighting a battle already lost. Thankfully, and much to the chagrin of some of the children, Jaharl had readied himself, plucking away at random strings in an effort to catch their attention without being too obvious. Once everyone settled down, and their focus gravitated toward him, he silently waited, showing no sign of worry about what songs he should play. The pause dragged on for long enough the children... I see. The pause dragged on for long enough that the children grew antsy and fidgeted energetically. Then, as if cued by some unseen signal... Oh, how about cued? Then, as if cued by some unseen signal, he began playing. Thoughts, worries, words themselves vanished. He, too, disappeared into a vast into the vast confines of his instrument and the music that it produced. Like a river unabated, the notes flowed forth, not from his mind, but straight from his heart, to his hand, to his quill. He played and played and played. Some songs sang merrily, others dripped with melancholy. Some felt purposeful. A few meandered, lost within themselves. By mid-afternoon, he stopped, fatigued by the outpouring of creativity. Grateful cheers followed, most loudly from Tamilia and the children. Once the performance was finished, they all returned to Makri to eat the leftovers from last night's meal and to finish any last preparations. 4 families gathered in front of Keith's longhouse as night draped over the village. For Jahar and Tamilia, their impatience had begun to morph into a blooming determination. Even if they were ready for bed, it was far too early to sleep. Are these logs getting shorter, or am I getting taller? Classo stretched out his legs and rubbed his thighs before taking a long drink of mead from his cup. That gut of yours certainly has grown. Jan poked her husband's stomach discontentedly. Aye, Ballard's the same way. Tanya nodded solemnly. I think our husbands have been sneaking too much of the honey and maple treats. You two could at least share. Just look at Taini. The poor girl's nothing but skin and bones. Aye, skin and bones, Tamilia's younger sister echoed as she fell to the ground, clutching her stomach. She looked up at her father with pity painted in her eyes. So hungry. Sweet merciful gods, I will eat 20 more oatcakes a day, all covered with extra honey and maple in memory of sweet Taini. Ballard placed his fist on his chest. He hastily drank what remained of it in his cup and tossed it on the ground, close to his feet. As if he knew what was going to happen, he braced himself right as his daughter barreled into him from the side, causing them both to topple over the log as they wrestled playfully. Watching them with sadness in her eyes, Saline exhaled slowly and noticed her breath clouded before dissipating into the night air. I'm going to grab a blanket. Tonight's a little chillier than I was expecting. Anyone else need one? I'll go with you. Hardwin's mother, Elena, stood up and followed Saline inside as the wrestling match continued. You two have been awfully quiet. I hope you both don't feel like the whole weight of the village is on your shoulders. Elder Gerald turned to face the pair. It's nothing. Simply enjoying the night with good company. Jaharl waved his hand to dismiss any concern anyone else may have had. Tamilia clapped her hand on her friend's shoulder. Don't worry the gray hairs on your head, Elder. I bet he's more tired from playing earlier than worrying over anything to do with the journey. Aye, the old man nodded contemplatively, making it look like he was struggling to avoid dozing off for a moment. To the others nearby, before he added, It was good to hear. Your practicing has led to some wonderful results. Thank you, Elder. I have a lot more to learn. I've been working on a new song. He quickly finished his drink with a quick gulp. But I can't quite piece it all together yet. Well, as long as you play like you did today, you'll have no issues with lodgings on your way to Samin and back, I imagine. The old man savored his own cup as he watched the flames of the fire flicker and dance. Use those opportunities to learn. That is something I've wondered about. The young man scratched his cheek. I think it might be difficult to find cheap or free nights in Samin. We could always head straight to Pirel Castletown if we need to, Tamilia added. Don't forget, my Uncle Cyrus is there. Aye, but he'd do better to send work back a bit more frequently, Keith interjected. And thinking on it, I know he may be busy, but Cyrus would have sent word. I doubt my daughter and Hardwin would have gone there and not seen him. I could be wrong, though. I could have told him to keep it a secret, but the young have a way of blinding themselves to the world around them, especially when they're in love. Oh, even the old ones do that too, Keith. Elder Leah faintly smiled, reflecting on some of her own memories as Elena and Saline returned, wrapped in blankets. I'd like to say, before the night grows too dark, we are forever grateful to you and Jaharl for doing what you were willing to do. Harold, Hardswin's father, raised his cup, and the others followed in kind. I know it's adding to your parents as well of worries, but once all 4 of you are back, it'll be nothing but joy to the end of our days. Aye, Saline wiped away a tear forming in the corner of her eye. Get the travel sickness out of you when you're young, and you all will want to do nothing but stay here in Mahri among family and friends for the remainder of your days. While the adults nodded and agreed to that sentiment, Jaharl could only smile and silently agree on the surface. His heart spoke differently. Though he had dreams of running Mahri as an elder with Hardwin, Demilia, and Vanine, they felt like nothing more than that. Dreams, like a far-flung path, long since forgotten, kicking up dust and obscuring the trail whenever traveled. It hid itself behind those dusty curtains of possibility before vanishing entirely. More often, he felt constant pangs for travel, for adventure close to his heart. Thinking moment. Fate is directing me away from Mahri. All I have to do is follow it. They continued to talk a little while longer, but as the conversation carried on, they reached a point where nothing more could be added to express their gratefulness, their concern, their determination. Eventually, the warmth of simply being in each other's presence carried their feelings. As they wished each other good night, the young pair's hearts hardened, not to protect them against the sorrow of separation, but with a renewed spirit of willful exuberance. With such an energy brimming within, they struggled as they forced themselves to rest. After a night of dreamless sleep, Jaharl and Demilia woke to the fresh light of dawn beckoning them to begin their journey westward and find their friends, or to Saedra's shrine, if needed. And that is the end of chapter 4. Dun, 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 dun. So, that is the end of chapter 4. An index quick. I think because I know it's going to be coming up here in a little bit, I actually only have Rowan listed in here. I know I could have mentioned the Saul, and I'll talk a little bit about that real quick afterwards. But so that Rowan is, bring up the map real quick again. Kapow! If you look down in the bottom left quadrant, you have the Rowanian Desert and Rowan there. On Rowan in all caps, and then the Rowanian Desert. It is a south of Pirail. It is a desert city-state. There will be people from there as the story goes along, and I've mentioned it before, but the idea is for 3 parts. They will be more involved. I would say probably in equal measures in part 2 and part 3. So, and for different reasons, maybe not directly, but maybe more indirectly or tangentially. So they will be involved. So in the idea for the game, there would have been a side quest heading that way. It wouldn't have been going directly to it, but in the game there would have been a side quest that would have led into going that way. But this is a book. They're not quite. The side quests are a little bit different in a book. So, so you have that, and then I mentioned the Saul. So that is SA'AL, and the Saul are. I mentioned it, I think, in the index for the Argia from the previous chapter. From previous recording or stream. They are mentioned. So in chapter 2, some secretly believe that the Saul are descendants of the Argia, which I mentioned were kind of like a Yeti Sasquatch kind of thing. But I think it's just because the Saul are considered barbarians of the tundra up north. So they're seen as a little less than of people, and a little bit more barbaric. But yeah, it's so chapter 5 starts on page 30, so 29. So basically, it's been 29 pages of a little bit of apprehension and concern, because what's come up is that it's been 2 seasons, and they have not returned, and you can make the trip pretty easily. So a day runner can make the trip from Callander to River Split easy enough. And it is not terrible to get all through this. It is not this is just a very small stretch of land in a sense. Like it's, so I can tell you this, from Perail Castle Town to Saymane, off to on the left side of the map there, that's about 12 miles, I would say. So if you're taking that, you got 12 miles, so you're looking, in the grand scheme of things, not a lot of distance. It is pretty scrunched up there. I mean, you do have these mountains, and even though it's got these bumping hills and stuff, it's kind of almost in a way like it is a plains-ish sort of thing, but it's more of a vale in itself, with the woods there in the center. But it is not tons and tons and tons of distance, but it is just a little bit. I don't remember the exact time frame for it, but I want to say it's probably about, over the course of, if you're just heading directly there, because that's also part of it as well. There's pomp and circumstance of the pilgrimage, which Hardwin and Vanine would have had, and there's the more intent to get somewhere that Jaharl and Tamelia will have. So there's a little less, well, we're in love and we're doing this do kind of thing. So so there's that kind of plays into it. The other thing I wanted to do is to flip the hero's journey a little bit on its side. There is the call for adventure, but it is that's something that is a bubbling tension underneath. I think that will probably crop up more, I would say, with not probably, it will definitely crop up more in part 2. It sort of seeps out here in part 1, but that was another thing that I made a conscious effort to do, was to have it where the vote for them to go was, sure, some of us don't agree, but most of the village would like you to do this. So there's the call for adventure to do that, but then there's also the responsibility that the others have kind of placed on you with it. And a lot of times it feels like, and so it's not necessarily that it's like putting it on its side, but maybe adding in something that has fallen away, because a lot of times it feels like with games or the sorts of stories, it's the responsibility is pulled from within to do the drive, to have the push for it. Here the responsibility is foisted upon them by others as well. So sure, they want to do this, but now they're kind of put in a very concerning position, as they're now having to basically lie about things, and also try to find their friends, and also I can't find them, bring back the blessing, and we'll have to go from there, kind of thing. So they got a lot of things they got to worry about and do, and I didn't want it. While if the vote would have gone differently, they certainly would have escaped in the night to do it. I was like, you know what? No. Let them have that go ahead. So it's not like they're trying to, like, oh yes, we got to sneak through. No, we'll see you out. Just come back. Dun 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 dun. dun. Delicious biscotti. But that's all right. I've got another one. I actually have to buy more because I'm running pretty low. So I will. It will probably be the last of the gingerbread one. I still have more of the turtle pecan, but I've got to figure out a different flavor to wedge in there now. So good. So very good. Sorry. Okay. All right. I'm going to do... I think we'll probably only do chapter 5. And then call it a wrap for there. Much to my chagrin, but... I think that'll... It's like I said, I'd like to do about an hour and a half or so on these. So, that way I don't overdo it, and it gives people enough of a chance to... Like I said, just a comfy little thing to do for a little bit, and then have fun. Go enjoy the weekend if you can. It is nice. I'm sharing the book. Yeah, the biscotti you have to work out on your own. All right. So, chapter 5, on the way down the mountain path. Before jumping into it, the title for this one, I want to say is a reference or inspired by a Nihon Falcon song, like a Trails in the Sky song or something. I don't know. It's just like, yes, I like the it is on the nose for a title. But I liked it. So anyways, let us begin. By mid-morning, the two left Mahri with a mounting number of promises, shouts, as well as warnings about running into roaming packs of the Saul pushing them forward. They trekked down the mountain path in high spirits, surrounded by the waning beauty of fall. Crunching leaves under each step, their task receded into the back of their mind as they became enveloped by what the present view offered. Both of them carried a wooden canteen and a backpack filled with jars of rations and goods to eat or trade along the way, as well as some miscellaneous wares to trade or sell if the need arose. Wedged tightly in the remaining space, they had stuffed blankets and their traveling cloaks. Tamelia used an old belt as an extra strap to secure her buckler, so she didn't have to constantly carry it on her arm. Her sword hung off her right hip in its sheath, which bounced lightly with every step. With all the practice she had done over the seasons, it was an easy enough task for her to shed her pack and draw her blade in a couple of fluid movements. As for Jaharl, he used his spear as a walking stick, though the butt of the spear rarely did more than leave an impression in the soil. He carried his loot in a wooden case with his free hand. Tied in place by a thick twine onto his backpack, he had been tasked with carrying a small canvas, which would serve as their tent, that had been neatly folded up into a thick square. You know, it's been a while since either of us visited Calendar. Calendar. Colander. Tamelia ducked under a sagging tree branch, still overdressed with leaves. Now that you mention it, wasn't it when Vanine and Hardwin left? None of the elders were too pleased with us when we got back. The aspiring entertainer stopped at the ledge as the path bent northward to follow the descent, and allowed his friend to take the lead. Cocking her head back at an upward angle, she tried to keep her eye on the path in front of her as she spoke in phrases. Oh, that's right. I always thought that was really silly of them. I mean, unless they thought we were going to run off with them or something. After they cleared the narrow decline and the path widened, shouldered by a thinning number of trees, he rejoined her side, retaining a brisk pace while doing so. Thinking about it now, maybe those two idiots are waiting on the western side of River Split to get us out of Mahri for a little bit. Wouldn't that be something? She let out a defiant laugh that echoed around them, giving the impression the mountainside was joining in on the amusement of the notion. For a little while, the duo continued their hike wordlessly, dodging exposed roots and rocks that were trying to escape the soil and bathe in the fleeting daylight seeping through the thinning forest canopy with escalating ease. Accompanying the quietude, reflection, and a shared distant memory sprung from both of their tongues simultaneously. Do you remember when... They looked at one another and began laughing as they said in unison, "The Argia!" Tamelia shoved her friend playfully, causing him to stumble. In that moment, terror leaped to her throat as she started to shout. However, what came out of her mouth was more of a dissatisfied grunt in recognition he was acting more the fool than in any real danger of falling. He replied with a smirk before speaking. "I know they told us to be careful of the Saul, and whatever freshly made beasts await us, but they should have given me more warnings about you. We won't even make it to Colander. I think that's what I want. Colander. We won't even make it to Colander. You'll have to drag me back to Mahri." A sharp laugh shot out of her throat. "You can drag yourself back up there any time you like. Maybe if you can't even handle a little push, you should stay. I'll take care of it all. Good luck eating and finding a place to rest that silly head of yours. Can't beat everyone up. I don't think town guards would appreciate the extra work." He turned around and started to climb back up, but when he noticed she wasn't pursuing him, he raced back down to catch up with her. She grinned. "Have a change of heart that quickly, huh?" A brief grimace of acquiescence flashed across his face. He rolled his eyes. "I didn't want to tire myself running up and down this trail. This pack is heavy enough as it is." "Then let's lighten the load a little." Tamelia stopped and glanced to her left and right. She pointed out a suitable opening to the right and beckoned her friend to follow. Once there, they relieved themselves of their gear. She fished out a small patchwork quilt and unfurled it on the ground as he inspected the stump they planned to use as a table for any bugs or rot. Content with the spot's offerings, they carefully rummaged through Jaharl's pack and pulled out a few strips of smoked meat, some oat cakes, and a small jar of honey. "I know they were planning on giving us quite a few jars of both honey and maple, but it looks like they gave us a bit much, don't you think?" The young man sat down, pulling out his paring knife from his pocket and placing it in front of him. He untied the string holding the jar's cover in place as he listened to what his friend had to say. "It does, but it doesn't hurt to have the extra for bartering." "And that's true. We'll find out how much demand there is for these things throughout the kingdom, which could be a good or bad thing." "You think they'd lie to us? You think they've lied to us about how famous our goods are throughout Piraeus?" "Not quite. Thinking about it, it'd probably be a good idea to bring some goods from Colander. I can never say this. Colander, too. Colander, too, if we can. Can't rely on those two alone." And by two, it's a reference to the honey and maple. She took a large bite out of one of the jerky strips. He tapped the case containing his lute. "That's where my music comes in. Not everyone's going to want to hear some wandering stranger play some random tune. Oh, sheath the steely stare. You know that's the truth." You don't want to carry it is all. You don't want to carry more is all. Maybe, but we can only carry so much. She pointed a lazy finger at the loot case. Well, we can always sell your loot. Defensively, he grabbed at his instrument, but before he could utter a response, a sudden crack interrupted their snack. Moments later, another loud sound broke the serenity of the area. The two exchanged looks, snatched up their weapons, and darted in the direction they believed the noise emanated from. He pressed forward while she circled around, until they met on opposite sides of the culprit, a large dead branch. You should have seen how wide your eyes got, like Liana and her lantern, full at night. Tamelia laughed heartily as she sheathed her short sword, racing back to their belongings. Like yours were any different, Jahar shot back, chasing after his friend. From the way you were acting, I would have thought you'd seen the Argia in the flesh charging at us. Like when we were younger? Like when we were younger. And then, memory sequence. That's the only way I know how to do it. Summer heat cooked the mountains and Mahri. Shade did little to shield anyone from the sultry torment of humidity. Vegetation wilted, and life lazily meandered throughout the surrounding forest, trying its best to endure the heat-filled strain. Most of the villagers thought the same, and ventured to the nearby Husren River to swim in its cool embrace. 4 children had other plans for adventure. Hey, are you 3 going to give up already? One of the girls asked impatiently, arms akimbo, as she stood proudly on a tall boulder that protruded toward the sky. Yep, we're giving up, Vanine. Tamelia stopped following the others and threw her hands up into the air. That's right, we're heading home. Jarl pivoted to hike back. Hardwin scowled as he turned around. Oh, don't say that, she'll get mad. Without looking, Vanine continued forward. Hear that, Jaharl, Tamelia? Hardwin knows better than to make me mad. Oh, dip your head in honey. She snorted as she tried stealing a glimpse of the back of her eyelids. We're coming. Both Tamelia and Jaharl tossed clumps of dirt in the direction of their friend, not necessarily aiming at anything in particular, before heading her direction. Eventually, the 3 others arrived where Vanine had been moments earlier, but they could not find her. They called for her a few times, while searching the area as best as they could. As soon as their calls began to carry an increasingly worried tone, she appeared, hanging upside down, high up in a tree. Miss me? Why are you up there? Jarl eyed the branches to determine how she was able to make the climb. Aye, that doesn't look very safe, Hardwin added. His eyes widened as he glanced about to figure out how he could climb up there and save her. Yeah, I don't want to help carry you back to Marie, Tamelia quipped as she busied herself with a patch of clover that caught her attention. Fine, quit your buzzing. Like that, Vanine picked herself up and sat on the branch. Then she snaked her way down one branch, sometimes 2 at a time, eliciting gasps from Hardwin. After she landed on the ground, she bowed, anticipating some sort of applause, and to hide the fact she was panting, half scared from nearly falling. That was great! Smiling, Jahal ran up to her in admiration. Nothing to it, she grinned widely. Just wanted to see which way to go. Oh? Did you see what Ander was talking about? He surveyed the area in an effort to find it himself. I think it was that way. Vanine gestured in a northeasterly direction. Her response garnered raised eyebrows from all 3 of her friends. What? I mean it. I think it's this way. I think it's that way. Maybe if she lies again, it'll come true, Tamelia whispered to Hardwin. I heard that, Vanine snapped, angrily stomping toward her. No, dip your head in honey. She bent down and grabbed a chunk of dirt. Dip yours, Vanine shot back, readying to tussle by picking up a nearby piece of fruit. Okay, you two, Hardwin stepped between the bickering pair. The moment after he did, however, he concentrated on dodging rotten wild pears and clumps of dry soil being tossed at him. Out of the way, Hardwin. It'd be easier to train bees to read than calming those two down. To reinforce his point, Jarl had to raise his hands to protect his face from the debris lobbed his way. See what I mean? The girls perpetuated their war with the occasional projectile for far longer than the boys cared to endure. So they set about the path, trying to discover the place where Ander claimed to have seen the Argia. After a little while, the girls gave up and joined their friends. They drifted aimlessly from one area to another. In one spot, the grass had not grown too thick, but nothing else was strikingly different from other parts of the forest they had already seen. In another, a long thicket, dressed in ivy and vines, covered the outskirts of a clearing, but nothing else of interest. Those areas offered little in terms of clues of the monsters they sought, but eventually they entered a small clearing surrounded by trees and bushes. A line of trees bisected most of the enclosure. The four grew incredibly quiet, and, collectively, the hairs on their arms shivered in fear as they entered the still place. Here, the temperature had cooled, and the daylight dimmed, giving the air an eerie quality, as if dread was trying to lodge itself in the children's lungs. Yet, the line of trees in the center struck them most with a blooming sense of terror. New to their eyes, the snarled masses stood, unmoved, seemingly unloved by nature's blessed gifts. Along each branch and bough, a multitude of thorns, like icicles after a terrible and wet winter storm, reached out as though to prick and drink the blood of any wandering animal that might carelessly draw too near. The trunks of the trees did not provide much safety either. Batches of thorns dotted them both high and low. Great, thick, tangled masses of spiderwebs concealed their creators, who made these trees their homes, and anything discerning the extent of the possible dangers they'd unleash if disturbed. "Here!" Vanine exclaimed loudly, her voice echoing throughout the forest. "Here's where Anders said it happened. This has to be it." Together the four inspected every tuft of grass, every fallen tree limb, every speck of dirt, as daylight waned gracefully into dusk. As nature was wont to do, its changing occurred well before the children noticed. Like a serpent, it sneaked up on them, while they were happily unaware and exploring the neat place they had found as they searched for evidence of the Argia. Before long, nocturnal beasts slowly stirred from their slumber, with grumbles and yawns, and trembling hearts took control of the children's senses. "Ah! It's getting dark," Hardwin squeaked before huddling close to his friends. "And we haven't found anything." "Hey, give me some space for walking." Vanine pushed him away. "We should probably walk in a line," Jahar suggested. "That's a good idea. But who's leading?" Tamilia asked. "You will." After hearing Vanine's answer, she let a dissatisfied pout appear on her face. Despite her efforts, the darkening surroundings hid her displeasure from the others. She let out a lengthy sigh, but accepted the role of leading them back to Mahri as best she could. While she led, Hardwin followed, with Vanine next and Jahar bringing up the rear. They set about trying to retrace their steps the best they could. As they did so, the four collected some loose rocks and sticks. Though it wasn't much, the feeling of some security lifted the burden of uneasiness buried in their chests. After some time, dusk shifted to night as the forest fully awoke from its lazy daytime slumber. Insects of all shapes and sizes hurried through their labor, their hunts, their lives without a moment's consideration for the lost children and their plight. Busily, they endured to survive, much like the children, but perhaps with much less fear in their minds. "Let's sing a song." Jahar stumbled over an exposed tree root. He braced for a wave of protest as the others spat out their opposition nearly all at once. "No! Do you want to bring some sort of monster over here? Do you think we can sing the Argia away? I have a better idea. Why don't we shout and bang our sticks together?" Okay, bad idea. I only said it so our parents could hear us. Maybe they could find us sooner." I don't know if I want them to find us too fast. We're going to be in a lot of trouble. Vanine stopped in her tracks as the realization of a harsh punishment loomed when they returned home. Hey, this was your idea. Tamilia's voice grew louder with each syllable uttered. You agreed to it, Vanine spat, matching her friend's intensity. You're going to be you're going to be in as much trouble as me. Don't even try to get out of it. Will you two shut up? Hartwin bellowed. The others looked in his direction with equal parts shock and concern at how loud his voice carried. Tone it down, mighty lungs. You could wake the gods by yelling like that. Tamilia turned around, trying to pinpoint where he was standing. Aye, and for good reason. You and Vanine's arguing is making me crazy. Like eating bad honey crazy. Why can't... Hardwin stopped suddenly, as all four directed their attention to an approaching sound. Within the veiled forest, a great deal of rustling, like a massive beast frantically pushing its way toward them, grew louder and louder. The four readied their makeshift weapons as a figure lumbered closer to them. Their fledgling courage escaped them when a large shadow appeared from the darkness and stopped not too far in front of them. They let out a collective shriek, causing the figure to wince. Mighty lungs indeed. The shadow rubbed his ears. Dad! Tamilia ran into the shadowy mass, hugging him tightly. Aye, now let's get back home. We can pray to Myron and the like when we're safe. End of memory sequence. Oh, I wish I could have seen everyone's face, Tamilia reflected, still dwelling on the memory. Jarl finished the last portion of his lunch. Mighty lungs. I forgot that's where that came from. And he hates that nickname so much. I'll make sure to call him that when we see them. He snickered. Oh, I bet he'll appreciate that. Don't care. She took a swig of her canteen. He deserves every bit of it. And when he starts calling you Tam Tam? She kept her canteen pressed against her lower lip. Her venomous stare through strands of her auburn hair burrowed into her friend's eyes. He held up his hands. Forget I mentioned it. In an instant, her hazel eyes softened. Just this once. The two cleaned up the stump where they ate. Tamilia left 2 apples as thanks to the gods, which garnered a muted response from Jaharl, who stood nearby and shook his head. Then the pair gathered their things and were on their way once more. He exhaled at the corner of his mouth. The rest of the way ought to be an easy hike. Aye, but best to keep a good pace. Might as well. Agreed. The sooner we get to Colander, the sooner we can get to River Split. And the sooner we get there, we can get anywhere else that much sooner, aye? A soft smile spread across his face. Aye. She glanced upward and studied the sky through the leaves and branches as best she could. Great weather for the hike, too. Hopefully it stays like this for as long as we need it to. He quickly surveyed the sky as well. I don't think it will, she scowled. Why not just ask the gods to make our trip as miserable as possible, then? He scowled back. Look at the leaves. They were as bright as any fire burned not that long ago. They're already turning brown and brittle. You know as well as I do that it means early snow. Maybe, but we don't know what it's like out in Perail. You think the weather is that different? Clohol isn't that far away, but it feels like it's always in a different season than Mahri. Really? Jarl was more than a little doubtful of his friend's claim. Really? She nodded vigorously to strengthen her conviction. Trust me, we'll be lucky, and the snow will wait until we get back with Vanine and Hardwin. He sighed. If you say so. I know so. In the meantime, we can enjoy some wild mint tea once we get to Colander. Tamilia smiled warmly. That does sound good. Liana's been here and gone since I've had a cup or two from Colander. The young man cocked his head to the side as he thought about that last drink. She picked up her pace ever so slightly. Then, let's hurry, Honeyfeet. Honeyfeet, my foot. He matched her pace before speeding around her as the pair rushed down the remainder of the mountain path leading directly into Colander. All right, that is the end of Chapter 5. yeah, and I did not put anything in the index for this one. Would there be anything? Would there be anything? No, it's kind of so. This is something I wanted to do, and I think I kept it a little bit lighter than I was intending to initially with the book, with seeding in memory sequences, because I think there's 3 or 4 in part 1, and there'll be a few more in part 2, but I didn't want it to be like a constant like stop and go. You get some idea of the group dynamics with Vanine and Hardin. I think if you hammer it too much, it becomes a little too repetitive. So you get an idea for how they are, and now they are pushing away from there. I wanted that memory sequence in there for that, but also because that those trees are they were that setting and stuff. Not exactly the same, but similar to a spot of in the woods where my grandparents on my dad's side had some land. I didn't go there frequently to this area, but it had honey locust trees, and honey locust trees are they have thorns. I will bring up an image of it, and that is what that is inspired by for the description of the trees. Oh, that is a very tiny image. That is an image for ants, but they have these thorns all throughout them and stuff, and that was, I remember seeing that it had this, and it was just kind of creepy, but not creepy as in like spoopy skeletons dancing. It was creepy, but more just natural creepy, if that makes sense. There's almost like this interesting earthly nature that I gives it the mystical vibe, for lack of a better word. But it's just like, oh, this is kind of just a far flung off thing. What, this is really weird. And the thorns, like, I mean, you see it in this image, something like that. When you're really young, you see that, and you're like, oh, that's really weird. Comparatively so, but that memory is what inspired that little environment, and I definitely wanted that in there because I just was like, it was a neat little thing, and it I thought was appropriate to have in there. And so yeah, that's something to bring up as well. So yeah, I keep on pinging back to the Argia early on. It is important for a few different reasons, but you have the this is a mythic creature. I think of like I said, referencing like things like the Yeti and Sasquatch. So it's kind of like this pale looking creature, and one of the villagers claims to have seen it, and then after he sees it, he goes a little sideways. He is no longer the same. And that is unfortunate. But the seeding in these ideas of mythic creatures, I think it's also something we as a people have gravitated less and less toward, until you had things like the SPC or SCP, internet kind of stories and tales of monsters and stuff. The backrooms, that has it's resurfaced in that way, but we've really pushed away from it, and I think there's something to having that in with like stories and stuff. And are the Argia real? Maybe, maybe not. I know, but I'm not telling you. But I think it's important to, and more mythic creatures of in local areas will also come up throughout the book, our books and stuff, because I think it's important. It's a very important thing to have that sort of stuff in there, because I think that helps flavor of people and makes them interesting in their own ways. So, but yeah, that is that. So this chapter is basically an idea, like getting a better idea and grasp, even if it's younger reflections of Hartwin and Vanine, as well as just hammering that point that they are leaving the confines of Mahri and the comfiness of home to go out there and see what they'll see. Dun, dun, dun. So that is it. We will probably wrap it there. That is the end of chapter 5. So 3, 4, and 5. We will save chapter 6. Let's see. It might just be 6 and 7 next week. Probably. It'll probably be just 6 and 7. But, yeah. So, thank you for sticking around and watching. Where's my thing? Oh, derp. Right there. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. And, yeah, I would say February 29th, but not this year. Should be March 1st. Yes, March 1st. Same time, we will pick up and continue chapters 6 and 7. So that is it. Thank you. Goodbye. See you next week. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for sticking around. Glad you could enjoy it. Oh, here we go. One last little thing. Saturday morning ASMR streams.